at breakfast on LBC.
I would imagine many of you have been discussing this over the weekend, the Roe v. Wade verdict and the overturning, and of course it's led to demonstrations across much of the United States. Corporate America getting involved now. Major US firms vowing to defy the overturning of women's rights to legal abortions by covering the costs of staff who travel to other states for the procedure. We're talking about companies such as Apple, Disney, Microsoft, Amazon, JP Morgan, and even, interestingly enough, Alaska Airlines. On Friday, the court overturned a ruling from 1973 known as Roe v. Wade. I cannot explain to you, if you've ever lived or worked in the United States, this is of such huge importance, not least the fact it's still playing on 50 years later, isn't it? Now, this had guaranteed American women the constitutional right to an abortion. But the Supreme Court judgment now means women living in roughly half of the 50 states who require an abortion must go elsewhere for the procedure. I say again, this is of such magnitude in the US. Here's how Fox broke the story.
From the news station, this is a Fox 4 News Alert.
The case regarding Roe versus Wade is now in. According to our reports from the U.S. Supreme Court, Roe v. Wade has been overturned.
And this was President Joe Biden reacting shortly after that verdict came in.
It was 3 justices named by one president, Donald Trump, were the core of today's decision to upend the scales of justice and eliminate a fundamental right for women in this country. Make no mistake, this decision is a culmination of a deliberate effort over decades to upset the balance of our law. State laws banning abortion are automatically taking effect today, jeopardizing the health of millions of women. So extreme that women can be punished for protecting their health. So extreme that women and girls who are forced to bear their rapist's child. It just stuns me.
That's President Biden. Just to explain, of course, a sitting president has the power to nominate someone to go to what's called the Supreme Court, and that is why he's referencing the work of previous President Donald Trump. Now, staying with the Republican side, the minority leader of the House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy, speaking after the ruling.
You know, today's Supreme Court decision in Dobbs is the most important pro-life ruling in American history. By a vote of 6-3, the court affirmed that the power to protect unborn life is returned to the people and their elected representatives. The people have won a victory. The right to life has been vindicated. The voiceless will finally have a voice. This great nation can now live up to its core principle that all are created equal, not born equal, created equal.
Someone who also had a voice on this, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, speaking in Kigali on the weekend.
This is not our court, it's another jurisdiction, but clearly it has massive impacts on people's thinking around the world. It's a very important decision. I've got to tell you, I think it's a big step backwards. I've always believed in a woman's right to choose, and I stick to that view, and that's why the UK has the laws that it does.
And just briefly, of course, protests from, it has to be said, both sides, anti-abortion protesters. And on the other side, pro-choice protesters. These are in Texas. And that's how toxic it is in the United States. Here to discuss, Sonia Soda, who's chief leader writer at The Observer and had a very powerful page devoted to it yesterday with the headline, "When even the term woman is scorned, judges were never going to defend abortion rights." And Aisling Goodison, who's spokesperson for the Centre for Bioethical Reform UK. And if we can, I'm going to start with Aisling. I understand that you are welcoming of what's taken place in the United States. If I've got that correct, why might that be? Good morning.
For having me on. Yes, I really believe that this is a victory for human life, and that this is a victory for women. This is a victory for America, and we can congratulate them for this bold move forward, because what they've done is they've just re-elevated the right to life back to where it should be. They've handed this, the Supreme Court has handed this decision back to the states, essentially. They're allowing the democratic process to now kick in, and states can say, do you know what, we value this right, we value the unborn, and we're going to give them back their right to life. We're going to recognise them as persons again. Their personhood status has been stripped from them for over 50 years. Like, this is such great discrimination based on age and location and and the unborn size. And now they're going to be recognised as people again. So this is a victory.
Okay. Thank you for... Please don't go. Thank you for summing up your stance. I don't think necessarily welcome in the same fashion is Sonia Soda, who I referenced earlier from The Observer. Sonia, how do your reaction briefly on what you've heard now?
Well, I think this is a massive step backwards for women in America. I think it's important to say that there's no effective way to ban abortion, actually, no matter what your ethical stance is on it, because we know from history that when abortion's made illegal and unlawful, women will find other ways, desperate women. I think it's degrading and inhumane to force a woman to carry a pregnancy that's unwanted to term. And I think we really need to focus on, I think the estimate is now 18 million women in the US will live more than 200 miles from an abortion clinic. And there are women there, poor women who can't afford to travel, who sometimes can't afford even to have a baby. And they are women whose lives will be put at risk when they now have to go and seek backstreet unlawful abortions. It makes them vulnerable to all sorts of kind of financial and sexual exploitation by criminals. So I think it was a huge step back in terms of women's rights and women's rights to choose, essentially.
Aisling, Sonia is right. This will not stop women getting abortions. Surely it will just potentially imperil their lives.
This provides an opportunity for real hope for women. It's now time for the resources that have been spent on abortion to be funneled back into the pregnancy care centres, the counselling centres. All this finance and resource can now be really used to give women real hope. And of course we know that women, they've been given and fed this lie that abortion is the solution to suffering, but we know that abortion compounds it. There's endless testimonies of women who have experienced so much post-traumatic stress following their abortions. Mental, physical health has been impacted, and now we can say, look, there is hope. There's hope for you. There's an alternative.
I'll put that to Sonia, but just reflect, if you would, on the words of the President. A woman would now have to give birth to a child conceived through rape. You can't possibly support that, can you?
Well, of course I agree. Rape is one of the most horrific crimes committed against women. And the rapist should be locked up and suffer for his crime. But should we give the child the death penalty for the rapist crime?
So just to clarify, you say mum has to go to full term with the product of a rape?
Well, to call a child a product is already a euphemism.
I apologise if I didn't seek to offend you. Let's put it another way. You believe the mother who has conceived through rape should then go to full term and give birth to the child?
So I believe that a mother who has conceived through rape needs care, support, counselling, and the lie is that killing her child will give her the solution to her suffering.
Sonia, what about the redirection of cash? As Aisling says, there will be and I would imagine we're talking about a lot of money that could go to these clinics, that could provide help, emotional as well as, of course, the physical side. Sonia Soda.
Well, I think we need to come back to this point about rape, and we're not talking about killing children here. I think there's a very important distinction to be made between a fetus, a group of cells, and a child, a born child. I think that's really important. I think on the rape point, this is really, really serious, because we know that violent men use sexual assault as a forms of control within relationships. And to say that women should be forced to carry pregnancies to term that come as a result of rape from their abusers, I mean, that is essentially the state allying itself with those abusive men because it's a form of control, and forcing women to give birth against their will to their abusers' babies, actually, it makes them more dependent on their abusers. And I'm sorry, if you want to fund pregnancy care services, there's absolutely nothing stopping you doing it. And the other point I would make is that actually one of the most effective ways to reduce the number of abortions is to channel money into contraceptive care, and that is something that the Trump administration have actually impeded.
A quick response from you, Aisling.
Sonia's absolutely right. The science in this is really, really important. And the biggest question that we need to be focusing on is, when does human life begin? Because if the aren't persons, and if they aren't human beings, scientifically and just on basic reason, then of course abortion is justified in every instance. But if they are human beings, and the science is conclusive on this, I don't think you'll find any biologist or embryologist who would disagree with that, because human beings reproduce after their own kind. So obviously they're human, the unborn are alive because they're growing, they're distinct, they're different to their parents, and they're whole, they're not human body parts. So they're distinct, living, whole human beings from that moment of fertilization. And if we really agree with human rights as a society, then the right to life must come before the right to choose.
I'm grateful to both of you. Thank you. Heard from Aisling Goodison, who's spokesperson for the Centre for Bioethical Reform UK, Sonia Soda, chief leader writer for the Observer newspaper. Indeed, you may be able to get online and see her lengthy piece in yesterday's paper. 7:06, we'll take your views after the 7:16 LBC News headlines. Holly Harris